Hello, friends. If you're just tuning in to this YouTube post for the first time, my name's Jan Frank. I'm an author, speaker, a licensed marriage family therapist, but I've been telling my own story about sexual abuse as a child. And I would really encourage you to start back a few posts ago so that you are caught up with the story. Last posting, I talked about how one of the ways that I dealt with the abuse in my life was really to cover it over, and I really just became an overachiever. And how I performed to cover up some of the deep insecurity that I had inside. I revealed at that time that I had told my mother what was occurring after the incident when I was 10 years old, but really never heard another word about it from my mom, and life just went on, and I continued trying to find ways to protect myself even as a young child, even as a teenager, coming home later at night or hoping to come in very quietly at night so nothing would happen. And so those efforts really were futile because the abuse continued from age 10 until I moved out of my house at 21. But I think at that time, what I realized as a teenager was that I think my mom believed me, but she didn't want to believe what was happening. She did not want to go through another divorce. I ended up talking with her later about that. And she herself was abused as a child. And as I mentioned in a previous post, that is not uncommon. And my mother never got help. It was in a time, she was born in the late 20s and she never told anybody. As a young child, she had been raped and told her sisters, but never told her mother and father, never got help. And as a result, she married someone who ended up abusing her children. And so I really went through that period of life really just trying to be good, do good, to overcome what was really how I felt about myself inside, that I had been damaged, that I somehow must have provoked my stepfather, that I was somehow to blame. And so I reached the age of 18, continued to live at home. I had to pay for my own college education. And at 18 was in a relationship with a man that was a few years older than me, that I had met at my workplace. I worked as a waitress, and really this was probably one of my first loves, and that relationship went sour, and I was just beside myself because I was thinking in my heart that maybe we would get married and I would finally get rescued. Of course, this man knew nothing about that, and the relationship, after I had compromised some standards, just ended. And I, at that time, became very angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at God. And I really remember making a very volitional decision that I had been the good girl, and that had not gotten me very far. So I was going to be the bad girl. And so I went into a series of bad relationships between the ages of 18 and 22. I became very promiscuous, had affairs with married men, and really, even at that time in my life, I was very unaware that the abuse had had any impact on my life. I made no connection to my behavior, and I was still a very motivated student. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology in 3 years, and actually I began working at a juvenile facility for wards of the court, children who had been taken out of their home due to abuse. And it was really, when I got hired, I was about 20 years old, but I remember when I was 21, there was a young girl, but at the age of 15, that had come into the facility because she had been sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend. And in those days, we had what were called intake cards that described why the child was being taken out of their home and placed in the facility. And I remember, even though I was college educated, remember reading that card and what her mother's boyfriend had done, and really for the first time in my life realized that what my stepfather had done to me was a criminal offense. I had never known that before. And I was naive enough to think, now that I had moved on with my life and was still going for my goals of getting a degree, and although I was in a series of bad relationships and very promiscuous, I just had no idea that my life had been impacted. And I wanted to share that this post. It's certainly not an area of my life that I'm proud of by any means, but I have such an understanding now of the dynamics of abuse, and some people might have difficulty understanding that. Why would someone who had been abused then go into that arena? And there's not just one answer to that, but I will say that the pull, not for the sexual activity, that the pull had to do with I found myself in relationships that I felt I deserved. Some were emotionally abusive, but most were very destructive. And so we're coming to the end. I know I told kind of quite a lot in that time, but I'll be going on from there. And maybe if you have some questions or something you'd like to, just shoot me an email. You can go to my website at www.janfrank.org, and there's a contact that you can send me if you'd like to ask more questions. So I would be happy to communicate with you. But right now I'll close with this post, and I'll see you next time. Bye.